Unless you want to get your names called out, please switch on your cameras, right? So today's session is going to be a continuation of our previous session, which we had, which was on the practical aspects of CPC. So anyone remembers where did we stop? Yes. Are the students the same, Kshitij, who attended previous Saturday and
Yes,
today?
sir. Third, fourth, fifth year students are there.
Okay, same students.
Mostly
Okay.
same students.
Yes, Mr. Ayush Tiwari. Where did we stop on last Saturday?
Sir, on that day, I am not there. I think
Okay,
Kamlesh sir has sent today only that link.
I see. Mili Sharma, where did we stop our class? Do you recollect? Nobody remembers where we stopped our class?
Guys, you can also put it in the chat box if you are not able to unmute yourself or raise your hand.
Okay. Yes, Abhishek Singh. Please tell me where did we stop our class?
So you were telling about notarization.
Okay. So let us continue our session. Is my screen visible to all of you all?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we were speaking about the different types and things to be kept in mind while filing a suit for injunction, where one of the parts was the wakalat and the documents which need to be notarized in case you're filing them from another state and filing the case in another state. That is how we ended the class on the previous occasion. Now, coming to the aspect of what happens after we file the case. So first I said you'll be drafting it, preparing a suit, then you file it in the registry. There will be a superintendent or the scrutiny officer who will scrutinize your file. He will give you an initial registration number. In Telangana and AP, it is called as the SR number. In the High Court, sometimes they give a USR number, or it's called the diary number. If you'll go to the Supreme Court, the practice there is as soon as you file any piece of paper in the court, they will give you a diary number, and thereafter you will see many cases numbered as an SLP or as an appeal, etc. As per the various suit types or case types that we have discussed. For instance, on the previous occasion, we gave an example of what a OS is or what an OP is. So all these different types of case types will follow after the initial registration number. Okay, so the initial registration or the diary number is called the is what they will give you as soon as you file the case. What would this mean? What is the actual indication of this number? It is like an acknowledgement given to you ki your paper is received by the court. Now we will look into it and number it if it is in order. You would have seen many times that the registry is raising unnecessary objections. These are comments made before the court. So these are all things that come before the numbering of a case. So first is the filing number, and then the filing number is also called the diary number or the SR, and then they will number the case. So like I told you in point 5, you have the diary number, then you have any objections. Whenever the registry raises objections, you will be given 7 to 15 days time. If it is a original petition, they'll give you unlimited time, but you should take the reasonable amount of time to correct the objections and resubmit the particular case file. Okay, then what happens when the case will happen? If there are no objections whatsoever, your case will be numbered. So from a diary number or from an SR number, it will become an OS. If it was a suit, for instance, we are referred to an injunction suit. Now, when you're in a court, there are some registers that you have to keep in mind. So that is why the next point is about registers. What all are these registers? That is the registration book or the SR book or the diary number. So this is the initial book where all the papers that is thrown in that particular court will be given a number. So that will have a serial number, and you should note down which is your case papers and when was it filed. So suppose your senior tells you, please let me know what is the SR number that we filed yesterday. Then along with the date you will remember what is the case number, and you will check for what is the SR number in this SR book. It's called the SR register or the diary register. There are some courts, like if you go to the Supreme Court, you will not have the luxury of getting these books. But when you're in the trial court, you will have the luxury of checking these books yourself, because majority of the tracing of files we assist the court officers there. Now, first I told you is the inward numbering or the SR book. That is the initial number that you get. Now, the second book is the return register. So the return register is containing all these case files or case numbers, which are going to be, what do you say, return for objections. When I said all these objections will be raised, and they will return that particular case or a petition or an interlocutory application. So in the return register, you will have all these details. So second book is the return register. So whenever your case is given a diary number and you're waiting for the final number to be given, but your case gets returned for because of whatever objections, you will find your file in the return register. Then likewise, there will be a suit numbering register. That means after the SR number, it becomes an OS. So that also will be mentioned in the suit numbering register. Then there will be IA numbering register, which is going to show the numbers of the interlocutory applications. So suit numbering will have only the suits. It will not have interlocutory applications. And likewise, the IA won't have the suit numbers. Now, A diary is a very important book that is maintained in all the courts. Okay. So this book is, the guide for all the lawyers of his or her cases. So please, someone let me know what an A diary is. Yes, Miss Purnashri Sharma. Do you know what an A diary is?
So A diary, sir.
A diary, correct.
So is it related to suit A related to land or something?
No, it's in all the courts. Yes, Mr. Tomar. Harshjeet Tomar. Do you know what a diary is?
No, sir. No idea, sir.
No idea. Should we? Yes, Mr. Prateek Singh. Yes, Prateek. Do you know what an A diary is?
No, sir.
Okay. So since I've given enough opportunity. So an A diary is going to be the daily proceedings of that case of that day will be mentioned in the A diary. So suppose in a court, whenever you go, there will be a cause list. I hope all of you are aware what a cause list is. A cause list will contain all the cases listed for that particular day in that particular court. And A diary will contain the docket, the daily proceedings of all the cases of that day. Suppose there are 40 cases listed in court 1. All the court proceedings of that 40 cases will be there in this A diary. Okay, now you have the eCourts app. Okay, so whatever comes on the eCourts app is first written in a book, then it gets typed by someone else. So this is called the A diary. So whenever your senior sends you and then he wants to cross verify what you're telling is right as what you're saying, he will cross verify with the A diary. He will check whether whatever you said happened in court or no. Or even the clients have the power to check them online. All the clients nowadays are very well abreast with court procedures. They know what an eCourts app is. They check their own case statuses online. So we have to be more updated. We cannot be outdated. So we also should know all these things so that clients don't tell us, sir, look, you told me on X date this happened, but the A diary is showing something else. So what actually happened in court? So clients आजकल trust blindly नहीं करते lawyers पे. तो हमें अपना काम अच्छे से करने के लिए all these things are becoming online. So we should be very careful of what we are doing, and we should be very clear that what we are appearing and representing is written in the court. So what I always take the care is, before say I argue or I make certain submissions and some docket proceeding is written, I always ask the court staff then and there to read that docket order. Sometimes the judge himself or herself reads the orders, so that, because sometimes the handwritings cannot be read out by someone else. So in such situations, the judges themselves read their docket orders. Some judges are very kind enough to, read their docket orders. It is very important to take these safety precautions so that wrong orders are not written about your submissions. Then you should always note what the next date of hearing is so that you don't miss it. And the last thing is, from the first date, last time I had told you, from the first date of hearing to the last date of hearing, if you're diligently appearing your case is half won. The remaining is going to be based on the merits of the case and how you take it forward. But your perseverance and determination to that case will be seen if you're going to appear in those matters regularly. That is why always it is important to be regular to a case. Do not leave your cases unattended. That leaves a bad remark from the judiciary about you. So I've been told to wrap up the CPC part today. So I'll try my best, despite it being such a vast subject, I'll try to do the best. Next is the most important thing, which is service of summons or notice. Now, in a civil case, in the main case, you have issues. Okay, you have settlement of issues. So if you see a trial, how does a trial start? It starts with first a plaint, then a reply, which is called the written statement. Then there will be settlement under section 89. That is a mandatory step, which means whether both the parties are interested to settle the dispute amicably without going for trial. They give an opportunity. Then after that, the next step is framing of issues. Okay. Then the step is evidence, and the last step is, what's the last step? Final arguments and judgment. All of you all should use a pen and a paper and make note of these things, because God has not given us such amazing brains that will remember everything. So please take note of whatever is being told to you. Right. So when we have told settlement of issues, so for settlement of issues, there will be summons which will be issued by the court, based on which only the defendant will know that a case has been filed by you. So suppose Mr. Kshitij has filed a case against me. Only when a summons or a notice is served to me by the court, I will know that there was a case which was filed by him. So the summons which is filed in the registry of the court will go to the Nazarat section, and from there the person who serves the process is called the process server. And you should always follow up. Following up is very important. Why? Because there are lakhs of cases and less staff and less judicial officers. So if you follow up your matter, only then the notices will go, only then the summons will go and will be served. And if the notice is served, there will be a service report. Now, even if it is not served, suppose your defendant or your respondent is not receiving the summons wantedly, then he will write in his service report that this particular person has refused to receive the summons despite being in the address. So then he will be set ex parte on the next date of hearing. So it is very important of what is being written in this service report. Now, always when summons are issued, they would not be served as per the date. Okay. Now, for instance, if you are going to issue a summons to a person who's in another jurisdiction, then on that particular date, the summons will not be served, because the procedure of sending notices to a person situated in another district is A district court will send it to B district court, and B district court will send it to that particular person. So since the procedure is so lengthy, sometimes summons might not go on time. So then there will come a option of await notice or await summons or await report. That is the last option. So this is a small, this is just a very minor thing in a case, but without service of summons, your case cannot proceed. You will see many cases, summons, because of non-service of summons, cases pending for at least I should say 2-3 years also there are cases. Some cases are dismissed because they do not file the summons documents on time. That much power this particular process of summons have. Now, what will you do if summons are not served, or you are not able to serve summons because either he's not receiving it, or he's able to manage the court process server, or he's able to manage the bailiff of the court? What steps can you do if the person is not receiving summons? Please tell me, what will you do as an advocate? Let us give opportunity to Ishan Bharadwaj. What will you do if you're not able to serve summons for whatever reasons? What will you do? Mr. Ishan Bharadwaj? Yes, Ishan? Okay, Rupesh Rathor? Hey, you people should at least be or
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Tell me, what will you do if you're not able to serve summons upon the other side? How will you proceed that step? What will you do?
Sir, sorry, sir, I don't know.
Okay. Suppose your lecturer wants you to come to class. You're not attending class. What do they do?
So he will tell.
Yes. Yes, Vishweshwari Matholia.
Sir, notice will be affixed on their last residing address.
Okay, correct. That's one way. So if your person is not taking the summons, you can affix the notice on their address. Yes, Aman Goswami. Tell me, what are the other ways of service of summons?
So by order 5 rule 20, sir, we can provide substituted service of summons.
Very good. So substituted service of summons can be done. What other than sending through court, you can substitute the summons sometimes by sending by courier. You can issue a paper publication. Okay, so these are the different forms of summons, and there are nowadays, you can see, because of COVID, we have even issued summons on WhatsApp, and courts have accepted the blue tick as the proof of delivery, and 2 ticks to show that you have delivered, blue tick to show he has seen. So 2 ticks was enough to prove that a particular document was served on X person. So these are the different ways in which you have to serve notice. Okay, now there are many ways. They will try to dodge the court staff. Then you can send notice to RPAD through courier, and last option is a paper publication. So these are all the procedures for service. Next is what happens if summons is served and summons is not served. When summons is served, if the defendant appears, and if the defendant does not appear, what happens in a case is what I'm going to take care. So now suppose the defendant appears. Now I'm taking the case of a defendant, but in any case, it could be a respondent, it could be the defendant, it could be the so it is just the other side is what I'm referring to here. Like, say if you're filing a writ petition, it will be petitioner respondent. So anyway, now if the defendant appears, he has to immediately take copies and file his written statement. It is very important that written statement, there is a particular time fixed by different courts of law. So if he appears, he will be given the documents and he has to file his written statement or counter. But if he is despite service, if he does not appear, the court will wait till the nth hour. That is, suppose in your states it is 4:30 or 5 p.m. The court will wait till 5 p.m. and then set them ex parte. What do we mean by this term ex parte? Everyone keeps talking of ex parte in courts, like the matter was heard ex parte. Please set aside the order. What do we mean by ex parte? Yes, you all can raise your
Judgment
hands.
or order in favor of only one party without listening to any other party.
Partially right. Partially right. Someone else who'd like to raise their hand to explain the term ex parte to me?
So one of the involved parties are not present or not represented.
Okay.
Court has
Yes.
discretion
Despite of
to
involvement of the court, the parties are not presenting their case in front of the court. So after this, the court set aside that the other party should win the case.
No. You have mixed few things from here and there and given an answer. Yes, someone else was given an answer.
so under order 9 rule 6, if defendant doesn't appear, then court has discretion to extend for one date, and even if it doesn't appear, it has discretion to order bi-party proceedings into ex parte proceedings, and also as a discretion.
So what do
to-
we mean now? Now, as a lay person, you are reading
sir.
from CPC. It says you can set them ex parte. The court has the power to set them ex parte. So what is this ex parte? मतलब क्या है ये word का?
The other party is not interested.
Okay. So
So non-appearance
So-
of the party.
yes,
The
you
single party
you
proceeding.
all are taking the horse near the pond, but you are not able to drink there. Make it drink. Yes, you are almost reaching the goal, but just missing it.
Sir, without waiting for a response from other
Ex parte means by one side.
Okay, so that's the closest answer. So what does ex parte mean? When notice is served upon you, you have to appear before the court and give a reply. So the court will wait for you to give your reply, or at least appear and tell ki I need time to file, to get an advocate, to appoint an advocate, or I need time to, read these papers and file a reply. And still even if you're not even coming forward to do all these things, the court will set you ex parte, means the court will forfeit your right to contest the case. The court will decide on that point. They will forfeit your right to contest the case. That is the meaning of setting you ex parte. Now, there has been decisions where despite a person's right to, contest is set ex parte, they were given the right to appear in the interlocutory applications because court issued fresh notice in that. Okay. There are some judges who say when you are set ex parte in the main case, there's no sense to send notice to you in the interlocutory application. Some judges are like, we have to always believe in the Latin maxim of audi alteram partem, and we will issue notice again and again in each IA separately so that you will get your opportunity of being heard. What is audi alteram partem?
Hear the other side.
Hear the other side. So you cannot proceed a matter without hearing the other side. So that is a foremost, cardinal principle of natural justice. That is, you have to hear the other side before passing an order. So that is very important. If your case, the person does not appear, you can insist to the judge to set them ex parte. In one of our matters recently, I've had the ordeal because the judge did not set them ex parte, but forfeited their right to file written statement. अब इसका अंतर आप बताइए मुझे. Forfeiting the right to file written statement and setting them ex parte. Please differentiate between these two by raising your hands. Forfeiting the right to file written statement and setting you ex parte. Please differentiate this terminology for me.
Maybe the period has
Raise
not.
your hands, people. Raise your hands. Please use the option. Yes, there are 100 students. Why only our people who have switched on the cameras are talking? What about the rest? Yes. Let us choose few names. Yes, Khushi Palawat. Since your camera is off, all people who are off your cameras will speak only to you all now. Yes, Khushi Palawat, what do you mean by forfeiting the right and setting them ex parte? What's the difference?
Sir, I don't know. I'm still processing what to answer.
Or you just guess. I'll tell you whether it's right or wrong. What do you think is, I told you what is ex parte. I have explained. Everyone has explained their views. I gave the correct answer finally. So what do we, you know what is ex parte? Tell me what is forfeiting the right to file written statement. Simple English, forfeiting your right.
So giving up the right to finalize.
Correct. So now differentiate between ex parte and this. What will happen if you're ex parte and what will happen if your right is forfeited?
If your right is forfeited or you are forfeiting your okay,
No, if
forfeiting
I am
your-
forfeiting your right to file written statement, or if I'm setting you ex parte, what happens in both the situations?
Sir, in case of forfeiting the written statement, I think there won't be further chances
Okay.
to obtain that right. And in ex parte, there is a limit to what action you can take later on.
Yes, Mr. Shashwat Saraf. What an irony, this question that I have put forth on forfeiting of right was in one of our party's names whose surname was Saraf. Yes, Mr. Shashwat Saraf, please answer.
Yes. Sir, forfeiting the right means, sir, the court would not allow any other hearing on that particular issue. Since it is,
Okay.
the party is not present at the hearing, and also the case will be going on.
Going on without them. Okay. So
Hearing
now,
will be
so then you
done
tell
at
me,
the court.
will the person whose right is forfeited, will he or she be able to participate in the proceedings thereafter? Yes, Saraf.
No, sir.
Okay. So I'd like to correct him here. If your
No,
right is
sir.
forfeited, you will be allowed to continue your proceedings. Okay. You will be allowed to, take part in evidence. You will be allowed to cross-examine witnesses. You will be allowed to file counters in any interlocutory applications filed, because your right to only file written statement was forfeited. A very
Sir?
important, yes.
Sir, what is that interlocutory application?
Yes, you can contest an interlocutory application. So suppose in a main case for recovery, there are some interlocutory applications filed to attach the judgment. You can, though your right to file the written statement is forfeited, you can still file counters in your interlocutory application. That's what I mean by you can still contest the other IAs, or you can still have the right to cross-examine the witnesses. The reason is you should, but there is a very huge flaw in letting a party, contest without filing written statement. The reason I say that it is a huge flaw is there is a cardinal principle of law, which is everything you contest, everything you argue has to be pleaded. Okay. Now, where will you plead when your right is forfeited? Okay. So that is why the pleadings are important. What is pleadings? Pleadings is not just the plaint. Plaint and written statement together with the documents are pleadings. So now if the written statement is not there, what is his pleadings or what are her pleadings? Nothing. So you as a plaintiff can take benefit of this at the time of final hearing. But what is the benefit of giving the chance to cross-examine to the defendant? What if he is able to break your witness? Suppose your witness was not prepared by you, he can break your witness and your witness tells, ठीक है मैंने पैसे ले लिया इनसे, settlement हो गया. Is there any case remaining? Without written statements also, he has hit the sixer. Okay, so these are some things which are very important. Now, what happens when you're set ex parte? You are not allowed to contest the case. You cannot cross-examine a witness. The court will directly proceed with ex parte evidence and judgment. There is no need to hear you. Even if you're standing in the court also, judge can tell you to please move aside or file an appropriate application to set aside the ex parte order. Mr. Aman was reading order 9. So there's a provision in order 9 to set aside an ex parte judgment. Suppose you're set ex parte, your right to forfeit is there, then you will file an application to set aside the order under section 151 CPC. If you all would have seen this, comedy shows of advocates, they would have told you CPC may everything or anything is under 151. So if you know the provision, you will write it. Otherwise, you will say 151. What is 151 CPC? It's the most important provision in law. Not Aman. We'll give chance to someone else. Yes, Mehek. What is 151 CPC? Mehek Sansia. See, if you people do not answer, Kshitij is writing
Sir.
down your names and cancelling your attendance. Yes, Mehek.
Sir, saving of inheriting power of the court.
Inherent powers. Very good. So under the pretext of inherent powers, you can ask the sky. If there is no provision to attach a person's accounts, file under 151. If there is no provision to reopen the evidence of a witness, file under 151. If there's no provision to direct the defendant to show what all properties he's owning, file under 150. These are the ample powers given to the courts that they can do anything under 151. Okay, it means inherent power, and inherent power can be used in the interest of justice. Anything means anything. In one of our case, there was a small pan shop. Okay, this pan shop, if you'd have seen these small pan tailors on the road, they're just a box which can be removed. It's not a shop. So this pan shop person, in that small box, the person behind him did not want his shop to be there. So we got a status quo. So he was, allowed to stay there from 16. He's still there. Now what that lady did there, she threw construction materials on his pan shop. Now when she threw construction materials, the box collapsed. So then what happens to my order of status quo? I filed an application to permit me to bring the suit schedule property back to its situation as it was as on the date of the status quo order. This prayer was under section 151. So I was permitted to build that shop, same pan dabba that you say. Just to fix that dabba, I had to file under 151 to restore, to turn the clock back. Sometimes you cannot change time, you cannot go back, but here we were able to do that. So these are the important circumstances and situations which are unique, but you can have justice delivered to your clients with 151. So though people tell you don't know the law, that's why you're writing 151, it's okay. There is another provision in the judgment which says, if the case has been filed under the wrong provision of law, do not dismiss on that technicality, because 151 safeguards that error which you made. So suppose you say you filed under Order 7, Rule 14 is to receive documents. You did not write that. You just wrote 151. The courts have said be lenient if the procedural numbers are written wrong, not to dismiss on that ground. They have said that. So this is how important your 151 can safeguard you in the hearing of that particular matter. Now going back to our slide. So first was this particular person will appear, then he'll have to file his reply. If he does not file his reply, he'll be set ex parte. Then the second date is, if you have filed a suit for injunction, please press for your interim relief. Okay. So then the next one I said, if you are setting them ex parte, if they are not coming, before setting them ex parte, the court might ask you to issue a paper publication. Then whenever the other side appears, as a counsel for the plaintiff, it is your duty to understand in which cases you should drag on the matter for the benefit of your client, or in which cases that you need quicker reliefs. Like for instance, a pawn shop case, initial status quo order given to the client. Any case, if you see if a status quo or a stay is given, the party will remain silent and not want to proceed his case because he has an order in his favor initially. He does not want to disturb it. Jitna lamba khichega, uske liye utna acha hai. Because we don't know what is the result of the suit. You know, as of now, as per the status quo order, you are in possession. You don't know after trial whether you will win the case or no. So as a precautionary measure, it's better to keep it pending, is one way. So short day to be taken only if you're, like say there are some properties which are being disposed, which you cannot delay. Even a day will cause you delay in crores. So such matters you should not allow the defendants to take long dates. Then on every date of hearing till the judgment, you should go on, tell your case. This is a case regarding this. This is a case regarding this. You know why? Because it will always get engraved in the judge's mind that, acha, this case is regarding that. Though the defendant might not tell his stand, the judge will remember what you're saying. So it will be in a way, a help to you at the time of final hearing. So always on every date of hearing, 1 or 2 lines of that case, just keep telling the judge so that their minds are refreshed. You won't believe, in one of the commercial court matters in Hyderabad, the commercial court takes matters only above 1 crore. So in commercial court matters, we have categorically asked the judge to give short dates because both our plaintiffs are aged about 70 years. Now we have made this representation since 2019. Now so much so, in 2021, I don't need to say the judge to give a short date because he says, yes, counsel, I know the plaintiffs are aged over 70. We are going to give a short date. So judge himself has taken note of such points. So these are very important things which will take your case in the long run in a positive manner to you, I believe. Now, if the counter is filed, don't immediately argue unless there is an urgency. If there is an urgency, you take a passover. What do we mean by passover? There is a difference between passover and adjournment. Yes, anyone knows what's a passover? Not our Passover meals, huh? Yes. What is a Passover? Yes, tell me. Yes, anyone? What is a Passover? So suppose a case is listed today in the morning and you received the counter, but you want to argue the counter, the IA, the same day. You will ask the judge for a Passover, meaning the case will be taken up the same day. And adjournment is they will give another date. Okay. So depending on the urgency of your case, you will take a Passover or an adjournment. Okay. Now, while arguing your IAs, you should see to it that the documents are looked into. How will the court look into the documents in an IA? You have to mark those documents. What do we mean by marking of documents? Yes. What is marking? Now, in the court of law, you will have some million documents filed. Say you have filed 40 documents. Now, out of these 40 documents, only the ones which are original will be marked in evidence. Now, you will follow the Evidence Act. There is this huge, misnomer that the Indian Evidence Act is only for criminal cases. No. Indian Evidence Act is for civil and criminal cases. It is for both the trials. Okay, this is first thing that if anyone is telling you, you please make them understand. Now, while you're marking your documents, why I say marking a document is important. Suppose you filed a case for injunction where you're a tenant. So your lease deed is the most important document. Now, in a IA where you have asked for injunction, that lease deed will prove, or rental receipts will prove that you are paying rent diligently. Since so many years you are paying, you're in possession, those documents are important. So those documents can be marked in evidence. Without marking, the court cannot see that. Though that file of the court has that document, the court cannot read the document unless it is marked. That is the technical requirement. If a document is not marked, it is not on record of the court. Even though it is there in the file. Okay. So you have to mark your documents. For marking of documents in IA, you don't need to have your advocates. Some judges even permit photocopies to be marked because IA mein itna insist nahi karte. Some judges are very lenient and they permit us to file. Now, if it's a documents of the petitioners, the series will be P1, P2, P3, P4. And for respondents, it will be R1, R2 and so on. Now, order in an IA. Now, suppose you file an application and you won the case. You will feel very happy that maine jeet liya. What will you do immediately after that? You have to file a caveat. What is caveat? Where is our guru here? Who's Mr. Goswami? What is a caveat?
Sir, it is an application under 148A of CPC where a person files in court to make सर इसमें ये होता है कि सर वार्निंग दे दे अगर कोई एप्लीकेशन आगे हेयर करता है पार्टी तो
हाँ।
पार्टी अगर एप्लीकेशन डाल दिया केविएट पे तो मतलब कोर्ट को उसको इंटीमेट करना पड़ेगा कोई भी ऑर्डर पास करने के पहले।
करेक्ट, वेरी गुड। इसने बहुत करेक्ट तरीके से आंसर दिया। दैट मीन्स बिफोर एज सुन एज यू फाइल your case, you win your case, you'll file an application of a caveat in the higher court, because this order will be challenged before the appellate court. So in the appellate court, before the court, suppose the other side is challenging the order, the court will order notice to you before granting a stay. They will never pass an order when there is a caveat pending. Okay. Then what is the reason? Like very rightly said by Goswami, it will give us the opportunity. It will be cautious that you have to hear the other side before granting stay. Okay. So always notice is mandatory when a caveat is filed. Now what happens, whether your IA is allowed or dismissed, you always have to obtain certified copies, because caveat file करने के लिए भी certified copy of the order की जरूरत है. And if you lose the IA, immediately after you get the order, challenge it before the concerned court of law. Right? Now we'll talk about the main suit. So we were talking about written statement and there is a timeline. Now there is Aman Goswami, which year are you in?
So fourth year.
I really appreciate your knowledge on the different rules and sections. Keep it up. You should impart this wisdom on your fellow colleagues and batchmates as to how you remember these sections.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
So if you see the written statement rules in a regular civil case, you have 90 days immediately to file the written statement. And there's again an extension of time of 30 days. But in a commercial suit, you have to file it within 30 days. And again, there's an extension. So the outer limit is fixed and you cannot change the outer limit. As per the SCG judgment of the Supreme Court, you cannot extend the time fixed for written statement in a commercial suit. So the Commercial Courts Act had come only in 2015. So these are new laws where youngsters will have more ideas because they have been working on them since recently. So it's very important that you always are abreast with the latest laws that have come about. Now in a summary suit, what is a summary suit? You file a case, a summary suit, and the court will issue notice to the defendant and tell them that we are going, look, A has filed a summary suit against you. We are going to pass a judgment to him. At that time, you have to file an application seeking a leave to defend. Like everyone hears, no, key right to hear the other side is mandatory. The exception to that rule is a summary suit. In a summary suit, the court can pass a judgment without hearing the other side. You have to seek permission to defend your case. It's a very unique procedure where you have to seek permission, which is called the leave to defend application under Order 37. Now, after filing the WS, plaint WS, like I told you, Section 89 settlement, and then there will be framing of issues. Now, what happens in trial? Trial is nothing but evidence, right? So evidence में क्या होता है? एक chief examination होता है, chief के बाद cross होता है. Chief examination में documents get marked in the main case. When we were talking of marking of documents, those were in the IA. Evidence marking of documents in the main case, series is not P and R. They are A series for plaintiffs and B series for defendants. So there are two types of evidence you all can see, primary and secondary. What do you mean by primary and secondary evidence? Since we are almost closing to wrapping up our session, I think all of you all can switch on your cameras. Yes.
Primary means original documents.
Yes. So always primary evidence is original documents. And secondary evidence is going to be certified copies. Because for instance, if you're filing a sale deed, you can file a certified copy of a sale deed. All public documents, certified copies can be marked. Secondary evidence is also photocopies. Suppose you original gum gaya, kya karoge? You will tell the judge that, see, as per my, I do not have this document. Please give me the please mark this document in evidence as a secondary evidence, because the law permits for it. If you read these sections, you will clearly see if a person loses the document or if the document is in custody of the defendant, you can mark the photocopies. Okay. Now, a very important thing when documents are being marked as a defense counsel is he can take objections. He can take objections if they are not originals, if they are irrelevant. He can also take technical objections regarding section 65B. What is section 65B, anyone?
Electronic evidence.
Electronic evidence.
Electronic evidence. Very good. So when an electronic evidence is taken, say you're filing WhatsApp conversations, say you're filing email copies, you have to attach the certificate under section 65B, which shows that this document is admissible in court. So even if you're filing a CD, you have to file this. If you're filing a printout from the system, you have to file it. But photocopies ke liye, it will be going under the secondary evidence rule. Okay. So these are all the objections that the council can take at the time of marking of documents. Now, these are few skills that you need to have while cross-examining. Cross-examining a witness is like, I've seen recently the two versions of cross-exam, three I must say. One is you are very patiently making the, making the witness comfortable, and then you suddenly throw him a bomb. That is one way of crossing a witness. कि आप बहुत अच्छे से उनको comfortable करा के, and suddenly you ask him a question and he's left dumbstruck. Another way of crossing a witness is make him uncomfortable since beginning. You make this hostile environment when you're crossing a witness. Like when I crossed a witness, I am not very sweet. I'm like a dagger. I sit with a lot of anger and I don't have patience. So when I don't have patience, that man also is jittery. He's like, what do I do? What do I do? So in this tension ke mahal mein kuch na kuch galat bol deta hai. It's very genuine that if I am sitting, he's coming to court for first time. There was this matter where this witness was staying in the property since 1992. He was just given space in the property to put his things. But after a few years, he told, I am the tenant in this property. Okay. Now that person lived there for 20 years. Now I'm telling that he's trespassing the property. So I started the case with his father was one of the members of this society which was having the property, who was no more at the time. So I started the cases for what it is for injunction. I asked him, do you think your father in heaven would be, happy with what you're doing here? Very irrelevant question, but he was emotionally very hurt. So that shook his brain. So I was like, chalo, theek hai, kaam ho gaya abhi. Then I crossed him for 3 hours. And in the end of 3 hours, he said, yes, I trespassed into the property. So you should try to make the witness either so uncomfortable that he gives an answer, or make him so comfortable that he thinks whatever you're saying is correct. I'll give you an example of that also. Before that, another way of crossing a witness is, by telling, there was this counsel who was saying, I'm not telling the same name, so I'll use my surname. So suppose a witness is a Thomas. Okay. So I make the witness sit down. I said, see, I will very slowly ask you questions. My name also is Thomas. You're also Thomas. I know whatever, we are from the same community. You don't worry. I will take care of you. I'll not damage your case. This is how he starts. And then he says, don't you think the plaintiff number 2 does not have right to file this case? Henna, what do you say? So he said, yes, actually he does not have. He forgot to note that this lawyer very sweetly sweet talked him and got his answer. So this is another beautiful way of crossing a witness. Another way of crossing a witness is 10 irrelevant questions which will irritate the witness, where one will be relevant and that witness will be irritated and give wrong answer. So these are these unique ways of cross-examining which will come to you only when you cross a witness. You will never get these skills, by sitting in this lectures where I give you some talks. You will get your own skill when you cross your witness. But these things can be useful to cross a witness in a better manner. There are these books on art of cross-examination that you can read. Now coming to a question and answer of yes or no. You can be very rude to a witness and tell him answer only in yes or no. Dono answer tumhare favor mein aayega. That is secondary. That is a leading question. Whether he says a yes or a no, both are against you. Only a smart witness will say, sir, this question ka dono answer galat hai. So he's supposed to add. or he's supposed to say, yes, I am not wrong, or no, I am not wrong. Both is I am not wrong, right? So a leading question should be fixed in such a way that the witness does not know what to do. Okay. Then you can also restrict the witness from giving explanations. So whenever you're going to be very, like I told you, a hostile environment jab aap create karoge, that guy is going to fumble somewhere. Like in one of the matters, he was a legal manager from some company. So I asked him a question and he said that is not relevant. So I screamed and told, you will not tell me what is relevant or no. Keep quiet. I didn't say shut up, but I said keep quiet. That itself took him, jittery. Then court ka, he was saying lunch bell ho raha hai. I said, I will decide when you have to get up here. Sit down. Ab uske baad to he gave wrong answers only. He said, I will not answer. So his entire evidence post that question, he said, I will not answer. So it was a damage to him, which he realized after the case was dismissed against him. So these are some tricks that you should use, and definitely you will not be liked after you use these tricks. But for you have to use these tricks if you want to excel in cross-exam. Now for all you 100 people, you'll all think that as soon as law college khatam karte Supreme Court bhagte. Supreme Court mein ye sab nahi kar paoge. Cross examination hota hi nahi wahan pe. So you have to learn all these unique skills. For learning them, you have to go to trial court. You cannot jump to the High Court or the Supreme Court. Now, what is the aim of a cross examination? You have to break the credibility of the witness. Bas, nothing else. Even if he's giving 10 good answers and one wrong answer, if it breaks his credibility, that is enough. Now, the last thing is, if you are the witness, suppose your witness is being cross-examined and he's giving some wrong answers, you have the right to re-examine. You can ask him questions to clarify that doubt. Like my client, when he told plaintiff number 2 need not file the case, I can re-examine him by saying, plaintiff number 2 cannot file this case alone without you, right? Then he can give an answer. So that is the power given to the chief examining counsel. He has the option of re-examine. So there's chief examination where you mark, cross-examination, then re-examination. Now what you should do for your witness, you should always conduct a mock examination. You should conduct a cross-examination and try to prepare your witness. That is what I mean by brief your witness and raise your cross-examination. Then next thing is you have to raise objections. If a question is irrelevant, if a question is to irritate, like my question to regarding his father, it was irrelevant or insulting to him, so or to annoy him, you can raise objections under section 150. Now in one of our case, like this was such an important provision, which is section 159, which is to refresh your witness's memory. So my case is where my witness is 73 years old. The pages in the case are 1600 and the person said, we cannot let you read the papers. I said, please look into section 159 of the Evidence Act. You can permit witnesses to read. Then he said, nahin, nahin, this is only for criminal law. I said, please read the section. Kahan pe likha hai sirf criminal mein. You have to bring this to the notice of people. Refreshing the memory of a witness is the most important provision of law, which many people do not know. I'm telling you, many people do not know. So you should take these theory and use them in practical life with ease. Now coming to interlocutory applications, there are so many types of provisions for interlocutory applications. Like I told you, million prayers you can have with 151 itself. Okay, kuch bhi likho prayer mein 151 chap do, you will get some order. Whether it is maintainable or not is secondary. But there are some provisions where you have the specific provisions of law. Like for instance, if your witness said something, if you feel when you cross-examine the witness, he said some points against you, you want to again cross-examine him, you can recall the witness by filing an IA under the said provision. Now, like I told you, there is no provision of law to reopen the evidence. So when I want to recall the witness, if his evidence is closed, I have to reopen his evidence. Without reopening his evidence, I can't just file a recall. Then that recall is a waste. Now, suppose you file documents. Those documents have to be received if you are the additional documents. Suppose when you file the case, you had 10 documents. 10 more documents are important. You will file an application under Order 7, Rule 14. If you are the defendant, you will file under Order 8, Rule 1. Then, like I told you, suppose you lose documents, you will seek permission under the secondary evidence. Now, suppose you know documents are in custody of the defendants, you will summon those documents under Order 16. Suppose you believe that X person is important to give evidence, you can summon a witness. Summoning a witness means calling for the witness. Summoning a document means calling for the document. That's all. The meaning is the same. Now we have reached final stage of our lecture and and our arguments also. So what's the final stage of a case? I think many people चैन की सांस ले रहे हैं. What's the final stage of a case? A final stage of the case is the argument and then the judgment. So first you'll have the arguments by plaintiff counsel, then defendant counsel, then reply arguments. Then they will reserve the judgment. Same day कोई judgment देने वाला नहीं है. Unless it's a high court where you argue and it's a small case where judges dictate orders on bench. But if it's a main suit before the court below, they will never. They will reserve for orders. Sometimes what happens after you reserve for orders, if you believe that I miss few arguments, you can file an application to reopen the arguments under again 151 CPC. File a petition to reopen and again the judge will hear whatever you want and again reserve the judgment for orders and then the judgment will be pronounced. I think that much is too much for students for CPC. I think nothing more should be taught. You all can come to court and see the rest. Huh? Yes, any questions?
Anyone of you have any questions, you can either directly ask to sir or write it in the chat box.
Yes, Vishweshwari.
Sir, you told about something about Nazarat, something
Nazarat.
like that.
Yes.
Can you explain it once again?
So Nazarat is just the section of the court which is going to deal with process or service of summons. Like when you file the summons copy in the court will send it to Nazarat. From Nazarat, it's just a section का नाम है. Nazarat section will have their process servers. Process server का मतलब क्या है? The person who's going to take this document and serve it on someone. So that is the section where all the documents or notices have to go. No, they will be going from that room. It will be that section is called the Nazarat.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yes. Any other questions?
So if someone wants to contact you or want to do an internship under you, so what?
You can just take my mail ID and send your CV.
Okay, sir.
No issues. You can apply non-virtually. We'll take your application. No issues. But you'll have to come to Hyderabad, Mr. Tomar. Then.
Sure, sir. That's my time.
You can. I'll just. Kshitij, you have my mail ID, no?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So please put it in the chat box for students if they want to give their applications for internships. Okay, you can do that.
Sir.
The forfeiture जो आपने explain किया था,
जी.
जो statement का right forfeit हो जाता है,
जी.
तो सर उसके आगे arguments होते कैसे होंगे सर फिर?
तो अगर रिटर्न तो अगर आपका रिटर्न स्टेटमेंट फाइल करने का हक फोरफिट करते हैं तब आपको क्रॉस एग्जामिनेशन करना है ना. लाइक आई टोल्ड यू दो स्टेजेस ऑफ अ केस. आफ्टर योर written statement is gone, then there will be evidence. Now when evidence is going on, you have to cross examine. Since you are not set ex parte, you have the right to cross examine the person. You also have the right to lead final arguments in the final stage. If you are set ex parte, you can neither cross examine the witness nor make final arguments. So that is the benefit for that particular person. Is Shashwat clear? But if that person was set ex parte, he cannot lead evidence. He cannot, even cross-examine the witness also. That's why it's important. Yes, Vaibhavi, Brahm Bhatt, yes.
Yes, sir. If we have lost our forfeited, so isn't there a provision for us that we can pay the cost to the court and
Yes. You have provision under section 151 CPC to set aside the order of forfeiting the right. Suppose after the right was forfeited, you were set ex parte and judgment was passed ex parte. Then under order 9 rule 13 CPC, you can set aside an ex parte decree and again recontest the entire case. If your right only was forfeited, you can just file a permission application to permit you to file written statement. You can file.
yeah, that's what my point was. But like before the judgment and after the forfeiting.
You can file an application to set aside the order, or you can name it as hence it is humbly prayed that this honorable court may be pleased to permit me to file the written statement. With as a prayer, you can file an application.
Okay.
Okay. Yes. Any more questions? Either raise your hands or you can put it in the chat box.
Sir,
Yes.
so can an order under section 151 be made by passing caveat application? Like it can be.
In the sense, could you please
In
repeat?
the sense, if there's an application of ad interim injunction,
Huh?
where court is satisfied that there is an urgency in case and there's no need to issue notices.
Huh.
But there's already a caveat application filed by the
So
opposite
you
party.
have in CPC order 39 rule 1
Three.
itself, which rule 3, which says case situations in which service of notice, if they defeat the purpose, then an order may be passed ex parte by noting the same.
But if
Even
there's
if
a
caveat,
caveat,
still
even if caveat.
yes, you can. But judges don't take the risk when there is a caveat.
Yes.
They always yes, notice has to be
Procedure is
served.
handmaid of justice.
Yes, there was sometimes what happens, like for instance, if the stay of today is important, otherwise the whole purpose of the case goes, then the judge has ordered ex parte even when caveat was there. Caveat will, one more thing, caveat is not only a situation when a person is challenging the order. Even suppose I am building my house and there is a person who's going on interfering with my possession, I can file a case, a caveat in the court telling that there might be a suit filed by someone. So that will be a caveat even without any order. When that particular injunction suit is filed, first stage only, we can get notice in that. Caveat need not be only in the when you're challenging an
suit is
order. Yeah,
instituted.
it can even
It can
be
be instituted
before a suit is instituted also, you can file a caveat. What is the important thing of caveat? Caveat is only alive for 90 days. After it dies, file a fresh caveat. Get fees 2 times from clients. Okay. Yes, next. Who else has a question? Either you people understood very well or you all were sleeping. I'll take the first one. That you all understood very well. Any other questions? Students from PIMR? No questions? Chat box में कोई questions है क्षितिज?
I think Khushi raised her
No,
hand.
sir. No.
No, sir. Chat box have no questions.
So we can wrap up this session then.
Sir,
Yes, Khushi.
sir, lately I've been feeling a lot of pressure being in fourth year. How would you suggest to become a thriving lawyer? Like any guidance?
First thing is you have to deal with pressure. Life में बिना pressure का कुछ नहीं होगा. Very important. As a student, if you are feeling pressure, then what will you do when you have when you're becoming a lawyer, Khushi? See, what you should do one thing. What I understood is pressure लेने से कुछ होने वाला तो है नहीं. So as it comes, you have to take it. We cannot keep thinking what will we do. Just do it. Now suppose your case is there, you're representing Shah Rukh Khan's son and वो अभी भी jail में है. Hypothetically, he's out, I know. Hypothetically, he's inside the jail. You have so much stress to bring him outside the jail. But what is your duty as a lawyer? To do your best and leave the rest. Did you do your best is the only question you ask your conscience before you sleep. The rest you leave it. If you're an atheist, you just leave it. If you're a atheist, you leave it to God. And with regards to the tension of a fourth year, right? I don't think you should take much stress because it's not worth it. The beautiful college life that you have of these 5 years or 3 years, this life will not come back to all of you all again. So I always tell my interns, it is not only important to intern, it is also important to chill in life and spend quality time with your friends, because this time does not come back to you again. Once you leave your colleges, all your friends are on their respective roads of their lives, and you people will be on your own ways. And there'll be so much stress in the work life that you will not have so much time or freedom, like the decisions that you take as a student have no responsibilities attached to it, but the decisions you take as a lawyer, as an advocate, has so many responsibilities attached to it. What will happen if I do A? It might affect my client, it might affect my family, it might affect my profession. All these bundle of questions come. So you need to learn how to handle, how to take your stress, because uh, I think if you'll agree with me that as a lawyer, for me, exam stress is not a stress, but as a student, exam stress is a stress. Assignment stress is a stress. Attending class daily is a stress. So everything, for everyone, their stress is the biggest stress on earth. So you should just know how to maneuver yourself in that particular mode. And regarding how to become a thriving lawyer, there is no secret to that. You have to be perseverant, you have to be hardworking, you have to be diligent, and you should always remember that there is no secret or a shortcut to success. For especially litigation, litigation, I always tell people, is like that seed, where it will grow into a huge tree and give you shade in your old age. What do I mean by this? Your colleagues will join corporates and earn in lakhs when you'll be earning only thousands, but you should not be demotivated, because when they retire at 60, you will be earning as a senior counsel per hearing in lakhs, and you don't have any retirement age. Then there was this one question who student said, sir, lakhs of rupees with in our old age, what will we do? See, it is all the question of how you manage your life. Okay. So taking stress, Miss Kushi, is not going to be helpful, but as a person who takes a lot of stress, I know you cannot say that you should not take stress. aa hi jata hai. But just take it through. As things come, you take it accordingly. With regarding to profession, you have to be very, very diligent and very, very hardworking. Only then will you get your due credit. If you have to get your due credit, you have to work extremely hard. What do you say? You have to burn the midnight's oil. So one of my seniors had told me, see, till the age of 35, you have this luxury with yourself to run around to million places and also sleep less and work more, or work the entire night and still be having that energy to go to court. So all these things can be done now. Do all those things in this age so that your uh, take as much experience as you can. Go to these small law firms or go to small lawyers, because they'll have lot of work and they will not have any help. So because you'll be the only help for them, you will learn more and you will be able to utilize that experience when you go forward, if you're wanting to become a litigating lawyer, is what I feel. Kushi, I hope that answers the question.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. And as someone who goes through a lot of CVs, is there anything that strikes your eye to distinguish a student?
To be really honest, two things. One was when all CVs were sent to me in my entire COVID time, we received at least some 200 students. I think we gave internships virtually from March 2020. I think March month had 7 students. तो उसके बाद पता नहीं इतने mails आए. I gave internships to everyone. I accepted all the interns and gave them slots as per my availability. But there was this one student who had sent a CV. I know his name, but I'm not going to take it here. I'm going to break his reputation, बेचारेगा फिर problem हो जाएगा उसको. So he wanted a particular internship in this month where we did not have slots, and that's when he sent a CV, and I was wanting to accommodate only because of his brilliant CV. And thereafter, I was so disappointed in the entire work experience because despite having so many internships, the quality of the student was very bad. So regarding CVs, I think I had conducted a workshop or something where I feel uh, a CV where you just mention where you worked is useless. I think that's what all of you all do. You'll just say where you all worked and how many weeks you all worked, and that is a useless CV. A useful CV to a lawyer or a law firm is where you say what you worked, where you say what you researched on, and you attach those drafts if you made a draft. Suppose you made a reply to a legal notice, attach those works that you've done so that the lawyer, if he's wanting to hire you, will see your work, will be able to judge you from the work that you have already done under XYZ lawyer. So you should always showcase your experience. Don't just tell that you have 10 internships with 10 people. What did you do there is very important. Nowadays, there are these video CVs which have come, I'm told. I don't know how true or false is it, but I don't think a video CV is required, to be really honest. But you should have your CV stating your personal details. Your CV should have your grades. Your CV should have your, sometimes CVs lack those basic details. They write all these internships and forget the basic details. And when you write your internships, you should write this internship was from when and till when, and you should attach the works that you have done. That is very important. I'm sure none of you all have had a CV where you attach what work you have done. Suppose you drafted a plain, attach that plain copy along with your CV. You can write it in the cover. And a very bad thing that all students do is they do not write a covering letter. All the email for internships were just, I herewith attach with my CV and please kindly provide internship. You should have a proper covering letter, and your covering letter should say what you're looking for. Visit is an internship, it's a job. You should spell check, very important. Spell check again is very important. And you should be extremely courteous. Whenever you write a mail, you do not address it with their names. Like I just got a mail, Manav, comma, I would like to tell you I want to join here. It sounds extremely rude. I do not expect you to address me as sir, but you can say dear Manav at least, if you think you know me so well. But Manav, comma is not how you address a mail. So these are some basic ethics of writing which should not be forgotten. There are some interns, अब number है website पे call ही कर देंगे, और अगर हम court में 10 बार call करेंगे and then we'll call thinking it's some client who's being jailed, they'll say sir internship चाहिए. This is not how you should behave. So and second thing with regards to a job is you should follow up, but follow up without irritating. That is the fine line that you people draw. That you send your internship, your CVs, you follow up with them on mail. If you don't get a response, you follow up with them again on call, and then again follow up, and then again if it does not come, then leave it. But do not follow up insistently that they get irked with you. That's the only thing. Yes, I think I've given too much advice on career also in today's session. Yes, anything else?
We need it, sir.
Anything else? Career advice agar bolna hai to there's one more thing. If you all are thinking of litigation, there is no need of LLM, to be honest, but it is always nice to have your name with the LLM degree attached to it. So don't spend a lot of money going abroad and coming before these same Indian courts that you're going to argue. Please save that money and have a better, decorated office and a beautiful library rather than spending 60 lakhs and going to UK and US and learning a law which is not going to be used in India. So I think an LLM is useful for those who are going to work in the corporate sector, and that also only after you don't take an LLM immediately after your law if you want to go abroad. Because if you want to go abroad to do an LLM, it's better you work for a few years, go abroad, do LLM, then come back. Then you'll see a difference in your pay package. If you go immediately abroad, even a student who went to NUS came back, got the same package as a fresher. So there will be a huge disparity and you will not get your money's worth if you go directly for LLM. And if you're wanting to do LLM in India, do it from the any ordinary colleges also if you want to litigate, because litigation mein LLM ka koi qadar nahi karta hai. So that's why I'm saying, because it has no use, to be really honest. But there are some perks of having an LLM to your name. So that you can definitely do an LLM. Others, really, there's no need of an LLM. I think these are the only questions people have. One is whether corporate or litigation, and whether LLM before college or after college. So regarding corporate litigation, if you like a desk job, 9 to 5, or now the timings are 24/7, I'm told. So if you want huge money and you want to be stationed at one job, please go for corporate. And but there are people who are happy with it. Like I know many people in the corporate industry, and they're really happy with the salaries, and they're really happy with the drafting that they get. Say for instance, whenever you're drafting a contract, whenever you're drafting different mergers and acquisitions, all those things, that gives them a different kind of satisfaction. For me, I like to argue in court. So you need to test what you want rather than just testing your happiness on the yardstick of money. Don't test your happiness on money. Just test it on whether you're liking your job or no. Not because like I like to go to court. When I had joined, I was not getting as much as my colleagues in the corporate world, but I like the fact that I'm getting to argue matters in court. That was the only thing I was happy about, and I'm still happy about that. So those are things that you will decide for yourself. Yes. Anything else? Yes. Anyone? We just end the call. So I would like to thank PIMR
So there was
College.
this one question.
Yes, Agnish.
Yes, sir. So, since I'm doing a BA LLB degree, right? And if I want to switch to corporate, or if I decide to work in a corporate for law firm, so like, is it going to be a disadvantage for me
Is it
compared
because
to?
you're talking about your course?
Exactly, yeah.
You're
Because
doing what? Didn't get that.
I'm doing BA LLB.
Okay.
So compared to my colleagues who have a degree in BBA LLB.
No. BA and
No,
BBA
right?
is just your names. That's all. University
Okay,
wanted
okay.
2 courses. They just made 2
All right.
courses. No
All right.
benefit for anyone.
All right. Because at one time I was considering doing a CS so that I get a upper hand.
CS is beneficial in the corporate world, but it is your law subjects which matter, not your BA or your BBA degrees. To be really honest, it is those law
Right.
subjects only which matter for getting you your place there. A CS definitely gets you an upper hand, but then your job profile also might get shifted to company secretarial work. It
Right, sir.
might get deviated from law. So I think if you want to stick to a corporate law firm, you can just have good corporate law internships, and you can definitely crack one soon.
Right, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes, anyone else? Before I yield the floor back to the university, I would like to thank PMR College for giving this opportunity again. And I think it's nice that they feel that I would have had some caliber to teach CPC, and I hope that with my limited experience, I was able to teach you people something that you all can take home and remember and share it with your future juniors in the days to come.
Only,
Thank
sir,
you.
it was really great having you, and we couldn't have learned more or less. We couldn't have learned less from you. We could only learn more because in the theoretical aspects, we don't know many of uh, the tips and tricks that you have told us. And I would like to now formally move towards the vote of thanks. I, Kshitij Rajput, on the behalf of Department of Law, Prestige Institute of Management and Research in Law, would like to humbly and sincerely thank Advocate Manoj Jaiswal Thomas, sir, who has enlightened us with his thoughts and knowledge by giving us brief idea about the practical aspects of Civil Procedure Code in both the sessions and for sparing his valuable time to address the students. I would like to thank Assistant Professor Mr. Kamlesh Jain, sir, for organizing today's EML and the previous session also, and for his support, vision, and guidance. A heartfelt thank to the EML committee members who have worked hard and made this EML series a true success. And amongst all, I thank all the participants for patiently listening and nicely interacting during the session. Once again, thank you everyone for joining with us today. Thank you so much, sir, for coming.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
It was very
everyone.
informative and interactive session.
May I end the meeting, sir?
Yes, yes. Thank you, all of you all. And I'll get to see you all
Thank you,
soon.
sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.